Good afternoon. Welcome to Pumpkins and Politics with Chad George, a Monday recap of my weekly podcast from last Thursday. This is a place where we come together to have an honest, candid conversation about politics, the world, and everything in between. I would love to hear from you. If you have questions to ask, send me an email at pumpkinsandpolitics@gmail.com with your questions, and please tell me where you're from, and I will answer as many questions as I can at the end of each episode. All right, let's get into the pumpkin patch. This week we talked a lot about the future of the Republican Party and where it stands and the role that the former president plays in that future, if any. We also talked about some members of Congress who are fueling the expectation of a Trump campaign in 2024. We're continuing also our weekly series on the 50 most influential people segment, where I choose one influential person from each state and talk about. This week, our influential person is the first professionally trained artist to make Alaska his home. He brings Alaska to life in his beautiful and moving landscape paintings. His name is Sidney Lawrence. So we begin with the GOP identity, which isn't clearly settled yet. And the tension is simmering as the party argues over its future. There are so many people involved in the future of the party. I don't believe any of us would argue otherwise. You have the faction of the Republican Party, which is the biggest, which is the Trump base. And they're the ones that are dealing with trying to expand these conspiracy theories of a stolen election, to stop the lie, whatever they're going to use, that's what they're using. That's a Trump base. Some are calling it the QAnon base. And then you have the mainstream Republicans, the Republicans that might identify themselves as Reagan Republicans. They are the Republicans that they believe in what the Republican Party stands for, which is lower deficits, lower spending, greater defense, protecting, being pro-life, also traditional marriage definition, prayers in school, that kind of stuff. Those are your traditional mainline Republicans. Reagan Republicans, what we're used to. George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Mitt Romney. Mainstream Republicans. Republican Party members are on the decline. We saw that. 49%, I believe, it is down to. I forget the stat, and I would encourage you to go and listen to my podcast. But I think the decline in the numbers to the Republican Party. Now, Democrats had some decline, and not a huge amount. I think we declined 1 point or 2. Republicans crashed like 13% or something like that. So what is that telling you about the future of this party? And where is it going to go? I think as long as you have members of Congress, particularly the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Matt Gaetz, the Ted Cruzes, the Josh Hawleys, the Ron Johnsons, the Mitch McConnells, that is what's wrong with the Republican Party. Now, there are some people that will argue, well, the Republican Party came more to the center. That is what you want a party to be. If you have the huge sides, if you have totally liberal, totally conservative, it lets out the middle. It kind of phased out. Republicans had, for years, up until really the Reagan years, liberal Republicans. That's what Richard Nixon would have been. Richard Nixon would have been a liberal Republican. Nelson Rockefeller would have been a liberal Republican. Even to some extent, Dwight Eisenhower would have been a liberal Republican. But what we have today is the conservative branch of the Republican Party, which are mainly made up of like Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, Mitt Romney. They even went even further right. They became nut jobs. They became the party of, let's not legislate, let's not do anything. We're just going to be the party of stop and no. Not stop and go, stop and no. We're going to say no to everything. We're going to make sure we block everything. We're going to make sure we force the Democratic leader, if he's in the majority, to file cloture petition after cloture petition after cloture petition. What happened when Harry Reid was a majority leader? Republicans had to ram stuff down. You had, Moscow Mitch that decided, President Obama isn't entitled to a Supreme Court justice, so we're just going to block it. And by the way, we're going to do the same, what we disagree with Obama about, and what we blocked Obama's agenda over with the naming of Merrick Garland, we're going to do the same thing that President Obama had the right to do. We're going to do it with President Trump by putting Amy Coney Barrett on, and it didn't pertain to us. It only pertained to Democrats. That's hypocritical, and that is where this Republican Party has gone. They become the party of hypocrites. When they're in the majority, it's okay. But when they're in the minority, it's not. And Democrats can be the same. I'm not saying that Democrats are perfect. Democrats are not perfect by any means. But our party's not dying. Their party is. The question that keeps going over in my mind is, are they going to become the party of the Whigs? Remember, the Whigs were a big party. Are they going to become the next Whigs? Remember, Abraham Lincoln was a Whig. When he served in the U.S. House and in the state legislature, he was a Whig. He was a Whig. He identified as that. And now we have a Republican Party that came out during the Lincoln years, a party that's only been around for a little over 160 years. And because you have these people like the Taylor Marjorie Greens, like the Josh Hawleys, like the Ted Cruzes, that say they're conservative when in reality they aren't. They're just plain out crazy. They're dunces. And that's where we're at. That is why your party, the Republican Party, is dying. Now, is there a way to get it back? Well, yeah. But you're not going to get it back until you can get Trump to fall out of favor. And one thing that I kind of toss around in the podcast is, would an indictment send Trump packing? Or Trump supporters packing, that is. I doubt it. The GOP still is a party of Trump. Now, and again, it goes back to how long. Well, if an indictment comes down, let's say that the Georgia thing goes south, that could possibly be an indictment. I could definitely see Donald Trump being indicted over that. And I think that he will. I think when the chips fall, Donald Trump is going to be indicted. You have the Trump Organization. Michael Cohen, I think, has spoken on 7 or 8 different times with investigators with the State Attorney General's office. You've had a subpoena after subpoena after subpoena for Trump records, concentrating just on the Trump Organization. And then you look at the tons of allegations that are surrounding the 2020 election. You look at what's happening in Georgia, where the Attorney General there is investigating as to whether Trump tried to influence an elected elections official to change the vote to make Trump the winner. You have the investigations going on in the District of Columbia concerning the January 6th attack on the pinnacle of our American democracy, the United States Capitol building, on what role Donald Trump may have played in that. So if he doesn't even get indicted because of the insurrection, which I don't see him doing that. Yeah, it's going to be damning. You're going to hear people say a lot, well, President Trump, I did this for President Trump. I came because President Trump told me to. Okay, I see that doesn't look good. I don't think he's going to be indicted. I think that maybe Rudy Giuliani might be indicted quicker than Donald Trump over the riot. But I think the underlings are going to be the ones that are going to be indicted, not the one who instigated it. Unless they can prove that Donald Trump actually, if they can prove what was happening back at the White House. What were the phone calls he was making? Because we were told he was on the phone. So you have that. The Trump organization, I think that if he doesn't get indicted with Capitol riot, I think there's two instances that is either going to take down Donald Trump or take down Donald Trump and the family or just the family. The election is going to solely be a Donald Trump thing. I think what comes out of Georgia is solely Donald Trump. They have him on video or on phone recordings. That is going to be solely a Donald Trump thing. But the Trump organization is different because the Trump organization could be an indictment on the Trump family. Eric, Ivanka, Don Jr., and Don. So there I think that's tricky. But anyways, back to the conversation is, do I believe that Donald Trump will be indicted? Yes. Do I think that he will lose some of his base through that indictment? And I say no. I don't think so. He might, but I don't think so. I think right now you have a former president who is opining about losing. He's a sort of loser. He's never had to lose anything in his life because someone came and bailed him out. This time there was no bailing out. No one came to his rescue. They tried. Beloved Lindsey Graham tried. Moscow Mitch tried. You had many other ones who tried. Instead of saying after the November election, look, Don, you lost. Fair and square, you lost. Instead, they rallied behind this bozo, this criminal. They gathered behind him and egged him on to continue the fight. And then Mitch McConnell comes on the floor and says, well, that's his right to have it fully vetted in the legal arena. I'm not arguing that. But no one even said that he could win that. He could never have won that. And instead of bowing out gracefully, like presidents have done when they've lost, or politicians have done when they lost, I've run several campaigns, you bow out gracefully. You lose, you lick your wounds for a day or two, you get some rest for a week, and then you continue with your life. You move on. You find other ways to be of service. You find another purpose. You don't sit and cry and moan and crash weddings, spreading the same lies and conspiracy theories. And you don't have your surrogates like Ted Cruz, and I guess Matt Gaetz now is out of picture since he's got his own round of legal problems, and Taylor and Margaret Greene and all these wacko nut jobs that are out there just spewing lies along with their hate and just rallying the base up. So that's where I don't see the bases going anywhere from Trump, because anything Trump said in the 2016 election, if everyone remembers, he said, I don't understand why people like me. I could go out on Fifth Avenue with a gun and shoot everybody, and I'd still be popular, even more popular. And it's true. We saw it with this. We saw it with the insurrection. So that's why I don't think he's going to lose his base. I think his base will rally around him. He's going to lose some. He may lose some Republicans that are being like, okay, this is just even too crazy for me. This is crazy shit. We're going to crazy town, and that's just too crazy. You have some Republicans that are just hopeful for the political debates of the past. I would go back to the political debates of 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11. Instead of the debate we have now, which is nothing but hate, innuendo, and falsehoods. And I'm not even going to say falsehood. It's lies. It's lies. And if you believe it, you're about as wacko as they are, quite frankly. And I'm sorry if I offend people, but that's how it is. I make no apology that I am a Democrat. But I voted for Republicans if I think Republicans can do a good job and if I believe in what they say. Again, President Kennedy said, and I used this quote on Thursday, President Kennedy said political parties have a use, but sometimes they ask too damn much. And that's true. Political parties are good. They have a purpose. But then they go away from that, like the Republicans have. And it's like, what do you stand for? Because if a party doesn't stand for anything, you are not going to survive. You just aren't. And that's where we are today. We have a party that just swings like a pendulum, just like Lindsey Graham, swings like a pendulum. Stands on the Senate floor, defends his president first. In the election, didn't have any good for him, even the first few months of the presidency. Then they started to golf together. So then the president was just fantastic. Democrats need to give him a chance. He's going to come around and govern well. He's just trying to get his footing. And then you have the election, and he stood behind his president. These are lies. He even made some phone calls to secretaries of state to diss on their election process. You had Donald Trump and others calling legislators down from my state of Pennsylvania and other states to see if they could appoint new electors so he would win. And Lindsey Graham was silent about that. And then you had him the day of the insurrection saying, this has gone too far for me. I got to bow out. And then a week later, he's on a plane to Mar-a-Lago to sit down with the fat orange ass and talk about stuff. So if you don't stand for anything, Lindsey, then shut the hell up, quite frankly. If you don't believe in anything, shut up. And that goes for Mitch McConnell, and it goes for Ted Cruz, and it goes for Josh Hawley, and it goes for Ron Johnson. Just shut up. We don't want to hear you. You don't speak for a majority of Americans. And I don't even think you speak for your own state anymore. You have Ted Cruz, who Texas had the worst storm that they had in most recent history: snow, ice, power outages, flooding. And what does Ted Cruz do? He doesn't do what politicians do, visit their state and then go back to Washington and fight for them to get money and help. No, he boarded a plane for Cancun. And then threw his kids under the bus by saying they wanted to go to Cancun with some friends, but I was planning on coming back. No, you weren't. Do you see the size of those suitcases he was taking? He was planning on staying. And until he was gilded and shamed, he came back. Even so much as leaving his dog in a cold house. And then to use your kids as an excuse. That's great Republican morals. The party of family values. The party of morals. You have Matt Gaetz now, who is involved in just a mess of underage sex and sex trafficking. Ron DeSantis is trying to get as far away from Gaetz as he can after kissing his ass for how many months. He even had the former elected treasurer of Florida, saying, I'll testify now. If I get a lenient sentence, I'll testify. Of course he will. Of course you will. You're going to get a lesser sentence, throw Matt Gaetz under the bus, and go to prison like he should be. But I bet you $1 million there's somebody in his congressional district today that totally supports Matt Gaetz. You have Lindsey Graham, who had a very close re-election call last year. You would think that he would learn something. You have Josh Hawley, who played a larger role in the insurrection than what he says he did. 2 major newspapers in his state call for him to resign. His mentor, former Senator John Danforth, said he was disgraceful and he regrets even ever voting for him. So, I mean, this is why I'm saying I don't think the base is going to leave Trump. The hardcore Trump Republicans, the people who believe these conspiracy theories, they're the ones that are going to stand. But you might have like a Liz Cheney, who I think showed great courage, great political courage, to say, I can't do this. You know, Donald Trump lost, and we need to say he lost, certify the election, and move on. You know, in 4 years, we can try to defeat Biden. But this is the way America runs elections. Everyone across the world is laughing at America. Everyone is. We always pride ourselves that we're the country that believes in election. That people speak here. I mean, people did speak. Senator Hawley. People did speak. Senator Johnson. People did speak. Lindsey Graham. People did speak. Former President Trump. But you don't seem to listen to those people. You listen to the small few who believe in these conspiracy theories, and that is who is ruining your party. Because until you get the Marjorie Taylor Greenes out, until you get the Josh Hawleys out, until you get the Ted Cruzes out, your party is free falling. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. The grand old party isn't grand anymore. There were parts of the Republican Party that I could have supported. I love the stance on the fiscal policy of the Republican Party, because it is where I lay as a conservative Democrat. So what replaces the Republican Party? Does the Trump take over the party and they rename it the QAnon Party, the Trump Party, the Republican Trump Party, Trump Republican Party? What do they name it? And what replaces the Republican Party as a mainline party? Some say, well, maybe the Libertarian Party. Again, I support 95% of the Libertarian agenda. It's everything I believe in. Decrease spending, decrease deficit, being more of an extrovert country, get out there, support other countries, help them, give them guidance. Stay out of my wallet, stay out of my pocketbook, and stay out of my bedroom. But then I don't believe in the more difficult position, which is they believe in just legalizing drugs. Legalize them all. If you legalize them, people are less apt to use them. And I don't believe in that ideology. I think drugs would be rampant if we legalize all narcotics. So that's where I don't like the Libertarian Party. So what replaces it? Because the sooner Republicans embrace that their party is done, their party has died, they can grieve and they can move on. So, yes, the party is still a Trump party. It's not going anywhere. If Trump gets indicted, then you might lose some. But I would be interested to know what you think. I mean, if you think that, it will leave Trump, let me know. If they might, I might be wrong. I mean, I did see an article just recently that said something that, Trump is starting to lose his grip on the Republican Party. Maybe. I think it's because he has no platform. He has no Twitter. I think Facebook was supposed to make a ruling, or is making a ruling sometime this week or last week, whenever, on whether Trump is being banned for life or whether he's going to be able to come back. I think if he gets back to Facebook, I think it's going to be a problem again. Twitter, they said lifetime ban. Don't think they're going to go back on that. Parler or whatever the other one was that some of the nut jobs were going on. I think they're coming back. But, Trump has said that he's going to create his own television station. That hasn't happened yet. Trump said he was just days away from launching a social media platform like Twitter, similar to Twitter, which he hasn't. I mean, when will people realize that this president lies? This president lies. He lied from day one when he announced for president in 2015, and he has lied every day since. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a crook. He is a criminal. And if that is what you embrace and endorse, then I'm sad for you. And I'm sad for your children. Because I embrace a party and a country that is kind to each other, gay, straight, trans, kind, loving, helpful, hardworking, dedicated, compassionate. That is my America. I'm not saying we get along and we agree all the time. We don't. I have friends that are Republican. I have family members that are Republican. We agree to disagree respectfully. I'm not going to change their mind. They aren't going to change mine. But we should be able to have a debate without going off to these other tangents that just makes people feel horrible, just to make them feel good. Because that is what the Trump supporters do. They make everyone else feel horrible so they feel good. So whether Trump stays around or not, I don't know, and I don't care. I know he goes on Fox News every now and Hannity, Newsmax, and the other network that call themselves news. They're not news. They spread Trump propaganda. Is Trump going to run again in 2024? Well, I think the legal problems of the former president, I think will rain on his parade. If he wants to run for president in 2024 or has any future going forward. 4 years is a long time in the body politic. Really a long time. Ask presidents. 4 years is long. 4 years is long. When you are a candidate, 4 years is long. 2 years is long. 1 year is long. A lot happens in those 4 years. Richard Nixon found that out. Now, it turned in his favor because Vietnam went bad. So when Vietnam went bad, that made Nixon look like an outsider, even though it was started really during the Eisenhower years of starting to send envoys and stuff to Vietnam. So, that happens. But, I don't know. Again, it goes back to the future. It goes back to Trump and his role in the Republican Party. But I don't think he's going to run in 2024. I did earlier. I thought, yeah, he'll run. I don't think he will. I think there's going to be a lot of other people that want to run. Josh Hawley announced he wants to run. Well, of course, Josh wants to run. Josh wants to run. People don't come to the Senate or the House anymore to stay. There are no more Bob Burrs or Ted Kennedys or any of those, Strom Thurmond. Some of those Strom Thurmond's not a great example. But he didn't come to say, okay, I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to learn anything. I'm not going to work with anyone. I'm going to give as many press conferences and statements and videos and all that, travel all over the country because I'm going to run for president in the next election. No one comes to stay anymore. They just come to run for the next office, whether it's president or governor. And I think if we have more lifetime legislators, those who come, understand the rules, work within the rules, legislate, and work on relationships with their colleagues, Congress wouldn't be so dysfunctional. Congress is dysfunctional because no one knows anyone. And that is why they're dysfunctional. And that is why you have Trumpism. So Josh Hawley wants to run. I'm sure Ted Cruz wants to run again. I don't know about Lindsey Graham. I think Lindsey Graham is going to run for a Senate as long as he can hold that seat. I don't think he's going anywhere in the Senate. And then you have, Lindsey Graham is making the argument that, we need to have Trump continue on. And in order to do that, we have to elect his daughter-in-law to the North Carolina seat that is being vacated by Richard Burr, who, by the way, was one of 7 Republicans that voted to convict Donald Trump in the second impeachment trial. So, is Trumpism over? I don't think so. Again, it goes back to I don't think so. Now, we'll see. I think the election in North Carolina, if Eric Trump's wife wants to run, and if she runs, and I would imagine she's probably going to run, if she wins, and wins by a large majority, then Trumpism is very much alive. But if she runs and doesn't do well, even if she wins the primary but does very low numbers, then that might speak for some trouble. I think 2022 midterm elections are going to be the telling fact as to whether Trump still has as strong a hold on the Republican Party as he once did. We'll see. Now, Trump did start to create a super PAC. Now, he has a leadership PAC. There's 2 different types of PACs in American campaign policy. You have a leadership PAC, which most members of Congress have some form of leadership PAC, for sure senators, because they have to raise more money than a House member does in order to run. But most members nowadays, for sure, they're popular or are in leadership, such as majority or minority leaders and whips and that kind of stuff, tend to have a leadership PAC. A leadership PAC it limits to how much money you can raise from individual donors or corporations and how much you can spend or distribute. So for a leadership PAC, I can't go into a Senate race in Alabama and raise $1 billion and distribute $7 billion on a candidate. You are limited to how much you raise, how much you can spend, and within a quarter. So you have 4 quarters in a year, you're limited. But a super PAC is different. A super PAC, you can raise unlimited money from anyone, and you can spend unlimitedly. That is why they are powerful. And for decades, you've had John McCain, who fought hard for campaign finance reform, that has tried to phase out super PACs. In fact, him and former Senator from Wisconsin, Russ Feingold, a Democrat, had the McCain-Feingold bill, which Bill Clinton signed. And because there were expiring parts of that, it was never reauthorized under George W. Bush. So it was phased out. And then members didn't, like some of them, so they didn't really do anything with it. It just was signed and pretty much left rot. So, for decades they have tried to get this stuff out of elections. Super PACs, I think, are horrible. They shouldn't be allowed. There are no longer your average farmer who can run for office anymore and win. It just isn't. The purpose of having a representative democracy was that the average Joe could run. They could run for whatever office they wanted to run for and have a chance, be equal. That isn't existing anymore. Now, if you're not a millionaire, you have no chance to ever be elected and influence policy. It happens here and there where you have someone that came from nowhere. And our last president that really was poor was Bill Clinton. And now, to some extent, Joe Biden, who didn't grow up wealthy. So by this flow of money into these elections, it totally floods television advertisements and radio waves and newspapers and billboards and phone calls and you name it, it floods it. So the average person who may not have super PAC support can't be there and have their voices be heard. They don't have enough money. Yeah, television is supposed to give so many free hours to candidates. That yeah, 20 years ago that was pretty good. 30 years ago that was pretty good. But it isn't today. Today it isn't. Today you need the support of a super PAC. You need that flood of money to come in. So, the super PAC, and it's being run by Corey Lewandowski, and if that name sounds familiar, he was Trump's campaign manager, I think, before Paul Manafort or after Paul Manafort, and then stepped back because he was rather controversial and made some statements that he shouldn't have made. But, he's a douchebag too. And I'm not shocked that Trump would have him run a super PAC. But nothing's been set up yet, as far as I know, because you have to register with the Federal Elections Commission in order to set up a super PAC, and then you run it. That's your money to disperse of in elections. And he's going to look at, first of all, he's going to look at the 7 Republicans that voted for his conviction in the second impeachment trial in the Senate, and then those that voted to impeach in the House. And he's going to come after them with a vengeance. Their primary opponent is going to be very, very financially well off. And Donald Trump is going to try to pick them off, just like you do corn off a cob. I mean, he's going to go after them. Lisa Murkowski already. Remember, these that voted to convict were censured by their parties. Here in Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, who, I didn't vote for Pat, but he's been a good senator. I can't complain too bad. But Senator Toomey voted for conviction, very vocal in it. I don't know why he didn't vote to convict the first time, but he did the second time. Then we had some wacko nut job chair in a western county in Pennsylvania. I don't remember if it was Washington County or Greene County. It was one of the wacko counties out in the southeast or southwest. And he said, we don't send Pat Toomey to the Senate to vote what is right. We send him to the Senate to vote for what we want him to vote for. That defeats what representative democracy is. You vote for representatives to go to the House, go to the Senate, go to your state legislature to voice to vote for your concerns and your voices to be heard, but ultimately it's their conscience. And then if they vote against their district, it's their opportunity to come home and explain it. And I think if you explain stuff, you don't get defeated. Our former Democratic governor here, Ed Rendell, said that in his course of executive offices that he had held, being district attorney of Philadelphia and then later being mayor of Philadelphia, he controlled the budget. He had raised taxes numerous times, both as mayor and then later as a governor. And he said, I never lost an election because of a tax increase. I raised the taxes and then I went back home to my constituents and explained why I raised them and what I'm going to do with that money. People who lose elections because of votes that they cast never had enough respect for their constituents to go back home and tell them why they voted for it and what they're going to use that money to do, or how that money is going to be spent. So, this is where we're running into major problems. A lot of it is communication. A lot of it is using money and claiming this First Amendment, which is what super PACs claim. You can't do away with super PACs. You can't limit us. It's free speech. So again, if you are going to get this Trump money from the super PAC, and he's going to get it started before the 2020 election cycle gets off and running, which is probably going to be another 2-3 months. You're going to see a lot of, again, back to Lisa Murkowski. Lisa Murkowski did this before. She lost the primary, and then she came back and she ran as a write-in and won. And she already said that her intention probably is to go to being an independent and caucus, if reelected, caucus with the Republicans, which she can do because she says she can't embrace being a Democrat. And I respect that. And then you have some who didn't want to face voters at all. A little bit like what happened with Jeff Flake in Arizona. Good senator, did not want to go down in a nasty, ugly primary race. So then, we have the super PAC. We have what role Trump plays in. What role then do people like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney and Adam Kinzinger play in the Republican Party going forward? Do they try? I mean, Adam Kinzinger, Congressman Kinzinger from Illinois, is already trying. He has been trying to communicate with his party and trying to bind them together cohesively behind what the Republican Party stands for. Pre-Trump and even to some extent pre-Tea Party. And I think it's all for naught because I don't think it's going to be successful. I hope it is. Liz Cheney has more political balls than most members of Congress. And she's paying the price for it back home. And you have Mitt Romney, who pays the price back home in Utah. Even though Trump was not ever all that popular in Utah, the Trump base is strong in Utah. And he's paying the price for it. Now, granted, he's got 3 more years, I think, till his term's up. People are probably going to forget about it if he even decides to run again. I don't think he will. I think you're going to see him bow out. And I think you'll see Adam Kinzinger after this election bow out if he wins because he's in trouble back home. You have Liz Cheney, who has a great future in the Republican Party. I mean, her dad was a former vice president of the United States. Her list of political appointments and political jobs is this long. And because some president and some member of Congress sex trafficker decides, we don't agree that she voted to convict, and I must defend the president's honor. Defend the president's honor. First, you have to have honor in order to defend it. So, I would love to know what you think of Trump's future in the Republican Party, and what you think about the future of the Republican Party. I would love to know because I think that it would be interesting for me and for all of us to kind of see what we can embrace and what we can't embrace going forward because this party is dying. And it's time to do an autopsy and get it buried. Or listen to Liz Cheney, listen to Adam Kinzinger, listen to Mitt Romney. Don't listen to Moscow Mitch. Moscow Mitch believes in one thing. He wants to be majority leader before he leaves the Senate again. That is his only goal next year. That was his only goal, period. He knew he was losing the majority under in 2020. So he started right away to try to reclaim it in 2022 when he has more members up for re-election than Democrats do. So now Mitch McConnell, that's his only goal. He wants to retire as majority leader. So this man stands for nothing. Again, what the Republican Party stands for, nothing. Mitt Romney stands, Mitch McConnell stands for nothing. Other than furthering their own political nest and being majority leader of the United States Senate. He doesn't believe or care in you, the American people. He doesn't care in doing anything legislatively. The last Congress under Republican rule The last two Congresses have been the most unproductive Congress in history. In history. Beating the Congress of the 50s when they were non-productive, the end of the Truman administration. So I think the future of the Republican Party is on life support, but I think dying. I would lean them more towards dead. But let me know what you think. Leave me a comment, and maybe we can have a good discussion, maybe use another one of these little podcast recap to maybe have an open, honest discussion, conversation about where we see the Republican Party and where we see the political system in general. We Democrats have our own share of problems that are simmering. Our factions are simmering, and this could very easily be us in a few years. So let me know what you think. Tell me what role Trump has in this party, in the Republican Party, and whether you see him running in 2024. And do you think he has a chance to win? Let me know. I'm anxious, and we'll talk more about it because I think it'll be something that we can have really a good, thorough discussion about. So as we continue the series, the very first series of this podcast is choosing influential people from around the country. So for 50 weeks, we're going to do influential people, one from each state. And we started off by Laverne Cox in Alabama. And this past week, we did Sidney Lawrence. Many have never heard of Sidney Lawrence. I never heard of Sidney Lawrence until I started to do research for this segment, for this series. And Sidney Lawrence, I have a picture of him. I hope you can see it. You can go to my Facebook page or Instagram page. All the links you can find on our website. And I have a picture of him there and a picture of the art that I'm also going to show you. But this is Sidney Lawrence. Now, Sidney Lawrence was born in New York City. He was a trained artist. He did back then. You didn't really have to go to art school. You could study under an artist. And he left to go to England, and he lived in a fishing / art colony in St. Ives. He did that shortly after he was married. He then was only going to stay for the summer. He got married. They went over there. They sailed over there. They were going to stay for just the summer and then come home. 15 years later, he came back. He came back and he abandoned his wife and children and moved to Alaska. Now, the reason he moved to Alaska was that was the height of the gold era in Alaska. You know, people left to go to the West Coast to search for gold. And instead, he started to paint. And he is a renowned painter. He is thought of highly in Alaska, particularly in Anchorage, which is where he settled. Even Warren Harding has a piece of his art. But he remarried a second time, a French artist, and remained married to her until he passed in 1940. But he was a tonalist, which he concentrated on how the light looked and how all the elements fell into place. And he painted mainly landscapes, Alaskan waters, totem poles, the Alaskan natives, miners, trappers, just trying to understand and putting out there to people who had maybe never been to Alaska about the solitary lives of Alaskans. And he did. And one of the pieces that I came across that I just absolutely fell in love with when I looked at it, and it is called Denali. And I think everyone probably has seen it. This isn't a great picture of it. I don't know if you can see it really well. I should have done a better job. But this is Denali. And it's from the hills above the rapids of one of the rivers there. And this became his trademark. And as you look at it, I hope you let me know what you think of this. Because I see, this is like, to me, quintessential Alaska. when I think of Alaska, this is sort of what I picture. And I feel it. I feel like I'm there. I feel the water. I can hear the water, hitting against the banks, and I can smell the trees, and I can see everything in this, and I can see why this was such a trademark of his. Um, and a trade, and it like you said, personifies Alaska. So he died in 1940 in Anchorage, and he really is known in Alaska as just being um, a great artist who is known not only in Alaska but international. And he has a great reputation there. He's held with great esteem. And I encourage you to go online and look at some of his other paintings. Um, there is a site called alaskahistory.org, and that has some of his art in it as well. Or you can just go and Google him, and you'll be able to take a look at his art. But yeah, Sidney Mortimer Lawrence was America's romantic landscape painter and widely considered Alaska's most important historical person. So, sorry, Sarah Palin, but you're not that important. But again, let me show you. This is Sidney Lawrence. He died in 1940. And this is his piece called Denali. And again, you can go on my Facebook page, or you can go on my Instagram, pumpkins underscore and underscore politics, and take a look at this. Memorial Day will be here before you know it. And it's a day steeped in history and tradition. This is a day when we honor the lives of those men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice to defend and protect our Constitution and the rights we hold most dear. In honor of this day, I would like to honor those who have died in service or any veteran who has since passed. If you would like to honor someone, please fill out the form and submit it. The form is included in my weekly newsletter that I send out every Saturday. There's a Google form link in there that you can press. You can also send me an email, pumpkinsandpolitics@gmail.com. Just put in the subject line Memorial Day. Or you can go on my website. All the information I need is there. Just click the email, include all the information I need, and send it to me. Every Thursday in May, I will choose one veteran to honor on the air. All veterans submitted will personally be honored by me on my YouTube channel, blog, and newsletter. All I ask is that you please submit your veteran's name by April 30th at 12 noon Eastern Time, and limit this to one veteran. So I will, like I said, everyone's going to be honored. So just because I have one veteran and maybe I get 10 submissions, I'll take one out of the 10 and talk about that veteran. But you'll still be honored via my newsletter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever I can fit you in. Your loved one will be honored and respected. I can't wait to really tell the story of your loved one, because I think that it is important to do that, and definitely important to get to know their sacrifices that they made for all of us, and to say thank you. That's it for this week's recap of the Pumpkins and Politics podcast. Thank you for joining me, and make sure to check out my website, www.pumpkinsandpolitics.com, and follow, like, share, and subscribe to all my social media platforms. Let all your friends and family know about me, and remember, you can find my podcast every Thursday morning on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And on that, make sure you rate, comment, and share. That's how we get the word out. Join me next week when we talk about President Biden's 100 days in office. We'll discuss some of the hits and some of the misses and where he goes from here. and we will continue our 50 most influential people, this time from the great state of Arizona. Until next week, I'm your host, Chad George, reminding you that together we can make this world better. Thank you guys. Have a great week. See you.